Yes, sir.
With the continued wave of mass shootings and the number of military-style weapons going south of the border to Mexico being estimated at about 1 million a year, which is fueling cartel strength. Can you give me your position on military or assault weapons?
Yeah. I respect the Second Amendment, and I don't think if we start banning certain kinds of guns that we won't have people who want to ban all of them. And I still believe that's what we should do. But if you look at what just happened in Maine, I think that gets to the crux of what the real problem is. Because guess what? Those criminals in Mexico, they're going to get those guns one way or the other. And the reason they are is because they got cash. And that's what people pay for drugs for. They don't pay with credit cards or gift cards. They pay with cash. And if you have cash, you can get almost anything you want in this world. You look at what happened in Maine. You had a guy who was deeply disturbed, as most of these mass shooters turn out to be. His family and his employer, the United States Army, told law enforcement that he was a problem, that he was disturbed. He even got put in the hospital for a period of time. And yet we didn't take the weapons away from him. That I'm opposed to. If you've got somebody who has proved mental illness, we can't have them armed with any weapons, whether it's a .22 caliber handgun or whether it's a military-style rifle. And guess what? He was using guns in his day job. He's a marksman expert for the Army. So we need to deal with the mental health issues in this country, and we need to make sure that people are communicating with each other. And if somebody shows domestic abuse or someone shows mental health problems, they shouldn't have weapons. And we need to empower law enforcement to go and take them away from them. Because if you look at most of these mass killings, almost all of them involve someone who is deeply disturbed, has real mental health issues, and you hear people talk about it afterwards and say, yeah, you know, we knew there was something wrong with them. Well, we need to encourage people to say it. Go ahead.
Well, just a follow-on to that. I mean, we've been talking about mental health issues for a long time, and whether it's Texas or whatever, nothing has really been done. And you can also see the mental health problem in the homelessness on the streets. And again, that problem is growing and not receding. And so I don't know if that's how we solve the mental health issue.
Well, we're not going to solve it by ignoring it. And your question just proved that. And COVID added to it, right? A lot of people were isolated, lost their jobs, and became mentally disturbed during COVID because of the isolation and the worry and all the rest. We have to ramp up what we do with mental health in this country, and I do 3 things. The first is I would start giving incentives to people coming out of medical school and graduate school on their student loans to go into mental health treatment, to psychology, psychiatry, and counseling. We don't have enough of them. Secondly, we have to lean on these insurance companies to be reimbursing for treatment for mental health in a way that they don't do right now. They're making billions of dollars off of us every year in the medical insurance industry. They should start paying for this problem that we're seeing all around us rather than pocketing the money themselves. And third, we need to make it easier to involuntarily commit people. We did this in New Jersey, and it helped significantly. You know, we had a wave back in the 70s and 80s of saying we shouldn't involuntarily commit anyone, it should only be voluntary. But what you're seeing in the streets now, not only with violence, but with the homeless folks who are not there by choice, but are there because they have mental illness, we need to get them into a hospital, into a facility, and get them treated. And sometimes they won't do it voluntarily. We should give government the power to be able to do that involuntarily, especially if people are speaking out violently. So those are 3 things I would do to treat the mental health problem, because we're not doing it. Your question is exactly right. And that's why I'm saying that's part of the problem. Even in Maine, when they knew about it, they didn't do anything about it. Most of the time, we don't know. And that's the problem. And that's what these 3 things can get at. But the 4th problem is, when we do know about it, we don't act. And the proof of the pudding in Maine is that last year in Maine, 89% of the gun deaths in Maine were suicide. Well, nobody commits suicide who doesn't have a mental health problem. Nobody concludes that the only way they can deal with whatever problems they have is by ending their lives, unless they've lost their senses. And so the proof is out there that your question at its core, your second question, is exactly right. And we're not dealing with it because you know why? It's uncomfortable. People don't like to talk about it. Mental health disease is different than every other disease. You know, someone in your family gets cancer or heart disease or diabetes, you don't hide it. But man, if someone in your family has a mental health issue, people don't talk about it. Because they think somehow it reflects on them. Somehow it means that they were a bad mother or father or a bad son or daughter. That's not the case. It's a disease. And we need to deal with it openly and forthrightly. Because when we don't, it's exactly what you're saying. We see it in increased violence. We see it in people living on the street and not only ruining their own lives, but creating a quality of life problem for everybody else who lives in that community. And neither one of them are right. So that's what I would do with it.